Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Often hold public forums really as a convener between the public and our elected officials. Last night we had a school board candidate forum at the IPC Center, and then today we're having the City Council. But also during the legislative session, we have legislative coffees, providing opportunities for our residents to have conversations with those who serve us in the area of public service. So we thank you to our candidates, Northwest candidates, for being here, and then also for our at-large who will be here a little later. Thank you for making yourselves available. And then now I'd like to introduce you to this evening's moderator, which is Brooke Blalid from the League of Women Voters. We appreciate you and the League of Women Voters in helping us moderate these forums. It's so important to have an independent entity like the Women's League of Voters to help us with this part of the forum. So thank you, and take it away, Brooke.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Welcome to the 2020 City Council Forum hosted by the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. As Deborah mentioned, my name is Brooke Blalid, and I am representing the League of Women Voters of Sioux Falls, and I will be your moderator this evening. We're very happy to have all of our City Council candidates running in a contested race present with us today. We've decided to split the forum into two sections. The first one will include these individuals, the two candidates running for the Northwestern District, while the second section includes the two candidates vying for the at-large seat. Each section will be approximately 45 minutes. And today's format for each section will be as followed. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for their opening statement. They may take this opportunity to address anything that's special interest to them, including why they decided to run for City Council. We will start alphabetically by last name, and then we will move on to the questions. Candidates will be given an opportunity to respond to each question, and we'll have 90 seconds to do so. Rebuttal opportunities will be given at the discretion of myself, and I will rotate with candidates is first to respond to a question, starting once again by alphabetical by last name. At the end of the forum today, each candidate will have an additional 3 minutes for closing statements to comment further on issues brought up or to comment on a topic that wasn't covered in the questions. We will go in the reverse order of the opening statements. Candidates, the timer is located at the front of you, and Justin will have signs to let you know when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. Greatly appreciate you sticking to the time limits, and if you should go over the time, I will let you know. We'll start with opening statements for the Northwest District with Julien Bourdois. Julien, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First off, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate tonight, and thank you for the Greater Chamber of Commerce here in Sioux Falls for also partnering to host this great event. My name is Julien Bourdois, and I am a candidate for the City Council in the Northwest District here in Sioux Falls. I am first and foremost a husband, and I want to just take a minute of this time just to brag on my wife. My wife just won a couple of nights ago the MB Award for the Young Woman of Achievement here in Sioux Falls. So I'm extremely proud of her and her accomplishments. She's also carrying our third child. We have our oldest, which is Jemiah. She's 8 years old, and a 4-year-old, Jalea. And as I said, one more on the way. So I'm extremely proud of my family. So first and foremost, that's who I am. I am also a law enforcement officer here in the state of South Dakota, and I've been in law enforcement for almost 10 years now. My wife and I also own a restaurant here in town, just downtown, Swamp Daddy's Cajun Kitchen. We started off as we started off in our church building, then we moved under a tent, and then we bought a food truck, and now we are currently in a restaurant in a Jones building here in Sioux Falls. I am also the Vice President of Establishing Sustainable Connections here in Sioux Falls, and we work to ensure that we sustain relationships and develop those relationships throughout the entire city to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity, the same equitable opportunity as anyone else. I'm also the Assistant Director for the South Dakota African American History Museum, and I seek the seat for the Northwest District City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. We'll move now to Greg Neitzert. Greg, you also have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Greg Neitzert. I've had the honor of serving as a Northwest District City Councilor for the last 4 years. I grew up in Sioux Falls in a working class neighborhood on the east side. We lived in a modest house where money was tight. I'm the son of an auto mechanic and a nurse. From them, I learned the value of hard work and living on a budget. I've taken that work ethic and fiscally conservative mindset to the City Council. I have a degree in computer science, and I've been employed with the same company for the last 19 years. We face unprecedented challenges, and the problem-solving skills I have honed over the years give me a unique ability to find solutions. I've lived in Sioux Falls for 25 years. I've been married to my wife, Jennifer, for 18 years. We have one daughter, Olivia, who is 11 years old, and we wouldn't raise her anywhere else. The quality of life here is unsurpassed. The city is safe, and people are fantastic. Opportunities abound. I want to help make Sioux Falls the place my daughter will want to raise her own family. I served on the Zoning Board of Adjustment for 5 years, from 2011 to 2016. I served on the Billboard Task Force in 2015. In 2016, I was blessed to be elected to the City Council. During the last 4 years, I've served on the Annexation Task Force, the Audit Committee for 2 years as the chair, and currently I'm the vice chair of the City Council. If reelected, I'll continue to focus on 4 main priorities: roads, public safety, quality of life, and financial strength. We'll continue to repair and rebuild our roads and aggressively fill the potholes. We'll maintain our financial strength and be prudent with your tax dollars. We live within our means. We never fund operations with debt. We only use it for capital projects, and we only use it when it makes sense. We keep a large emergency fund, and because of that, we're not going to have to make drastic cuts or cut your services in the face of the sharp economic downturn. We'll keep our city safe. We'll give the police the tools they need, and we'll give them the pay that they deserve. We'll take drug dealers off the streets, and we'll get those addicted the treatment that they need. We'll preserve and improve our quality of life. We'll extend the bike trail through the Northwest District, and we'll continue to add parks as the city grows and expands. If reelected, I will continue to tirelessly serve my constituents. I'll stand on principle. I'll make decisions based on extensive due diligence, taking input from all sides. I'll make decisions based on the long-term best interests of the citizens and our city. Our best days are yet to come, and I'm excited to be part of it. I'm asking for your vote on June 2nd to continue serving as your Northwest District City Councilor. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We will now move to questions. Remember, each candidate has 90 seconds for your response. The first question: what district leadership strengths would you bring to City Hall if elected to City Council? Julian, you're first.
Yep, thank you for that question. So my strengths in particular come in leadership. When we talk about the law enforcement career that I've had, as I said, I've served as a state law enforcement officer for approximately 10 years. I actually started my career off in Pierre, where I had the opportunity to learn under not just other law enforcement officers, but also our previous governor and our previous lieutenant governor. Actually, at my campaign announcement, I had the honor to have one of my mentors, which is Lieutenant Governor Matt Michaels, introduce me. And so under his leadership, under his mentorship, I have grown leaps and bounds over the past 10 years, not just as a law enforcement officer, but as someone who wants to serve not just this community, but the entire state of South Dakota. I also hold near and dear to my heart mentorship. I enjoy giving back. And so part of what I do when I'm not working in law enforcement and when I'm not at the restaurant is I mentor individuals. Is that 30 seconds? Okay, sorry. And so I am proud to say that I have been a mentor at Roosevelt High School and Washington High School over the past 3 years, giving back directly to our community.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, over the last 4 years, I've demonstrated leadership. I've moved my way up to the vice chair of the city council, and I've also served on the audit committee as its audit chair for the last 2 years, which has been really a pleasure. We have incredible employees that work for us, and as the vice chair of the city council, I'm also the personnel manager, and it's really been a pleasure. It's amazing the city employees that we have. I continue to lead with integrity. I try to make decisions based on the best interests of the city, in the long-term interests of all citizens, not on my own self-interest. I hold myself to very high standards. I work incredibly hard. I'm a perfectionist, and as my wife would probably tell you, I am my own biggest critic. I'm very hardworking, I'm principled, and I will continue to lead with integrity and to try to elevate the conversation on this city council and make decisions based on extensive due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question. As the policy-making body for the city of Sioux Falls, what key initiatives would you bring as a council member? Greg, you are first.
Sure. Well, the first thing is, although we are obviously in a bit of a crisis right now and money is tight, one of the things that we have to make sure to do is, along with keeping infrastructure up, is addressing quality of life. We cannot let that go completely. Now, it's had to take a backseat a little bit because we've had to double down on infrastructure to catch up on some things like roads. But one of the reasons why people live here is quality of life. And that's why I'm pushing very hard, and I was able to get back into the budget, the bike trail in the Northwest District. That is a big passion of mine. That has been on hold for over a decade. It's time to get that moving, and we've got the momentum going, and we're going to move that thing and get it moving to the north. We also need to talk about how are we going to rebuild our pools. We have to do that. They're really coming to where they're reaching the end of their useful life. So we've got to talk about how do we do those responsibly and keep moving the ball forward. If all we do is work on infrastructure, it's not going to be a very fun place to live. But at the same time, obviously infrastructure and public safety, those are the two linchpins. Nothing can happen in the city without infrastructure and public safety. If you don't have infrastructure, people can't live, they can't develop, businesses can't grow. And as we've learned from the coronavirus, if people don't feel safe, nothing can happen. So that's why we have to have public safety. We have to continue to work on that and continue hiring police officers aggressively. So it's really those three things. It's public safety. It's public safety and quality of life, and then also making sure that we're very fiscally responsible. It's all of those things in our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian.
Yeah, thank you. So, two things let me back up. One of the things that I have made it a point to do is to ensure that I talk to the citizens and the community members of Sioux Falls. And two things that I've heard over and over and over again from the working class here in Sioux Falls is about, number one, affordable housing in our community. And then number two, our state actually has no regulations when it comes to occupational safety and health. So I'll start with that. I'll start with the occupational safety and health concerns and the lack of regulations that our state has. Now, just because our state has no regulations, that absolutely does not mean that our city cannot put forth the effort to include those who work in Sioux Falls in whatever safety plan that we have necessary. So as a public safety official or as a public safety officer for the past 10 years, I understand better than anybody else those safety hazards and the reasons that we need those regulations in place to ensure the safety of every citizen that we have working in our community. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, is the affordable housing, and I'll be quick because I know my time is short, but we actually have public parking policies, which in certain homes, if you wanted to build maybe a studio apartment over your garage or whatever, you would actually have to build an additional parking spot just to do so. And it's not cost effective for those who are trying to make housing affordable here in our community. So those are two things that I am hearing over and over again, and I ensure that I will bring forth some attention to those issues.
Thank you very much. The next question. How will you collaborate with the mayor, city administration, and other community organizations to address important community concerns such as workforce development? Julian, you are first.
All right. So in particular, when we talk about workforce development, I have worked in close relationships with a company here in Sioux Falls, and I won't blast their name out, but it's a company that's also worked with the city. I've also had conversations directly with the mayor and directly with several current city councilmen about the workforce development here in Sioux Falls. As we mentioned earlier, my wife and I own a restaurant in town, and we have made it a point to ensure that when we hire individuals, we hire those who, number one, might not have an opportunity to be hired otherwise. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why my wife won the award was because we look at those coming directly from the prison system to make sure that we give them a second or third or fourth opportunity at life. And so for me, it's near and dear to my heart to make sure that we provide the number one, the opportunity, but number two, the mentorship, because I know for a fact that only if you give a person only that opportunity and not the mentorship to develop them from step one to step two to step three, then that causes recidivism rates to increase.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, workforce development is one of the biggest issues we have here in the city, and that's something where we work very closely with the subject matter experts, the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, and the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. Those are two of our big experts at that. And then, of course, Forward Sioux Falls, which is the joint collaboration of those two. And that is why we fund them. We fund them annually, Forward Sioux Falls, with quite a bit of money. As a city, so that we can work on those things. One of the things we also do, and we need to do even a better job at, is working with the other units of government. For example, the Sioux Falls School District and the other school districts, because education is key. We have to have an educated workforce. We have to make sure that we're doing what we can to get them the tools that they need, and that's why we're also providing funding to Southeast Tech to start things like our Vet Tech program, the first in the state, things that are going to address that. And then also working with state legislators to make sure that education funding is there and those other things are in place. And then, of course, mentoring with our support of the Sioux 52 program, which Rotary and the mayor really are championing, which is really, really something important where we can reach people individually and change their lives. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The next question. Being a city councilor requires nearly constant decision-making and consensus building. Tell us about a time in your professional or political life that you made a difficult decision and why you built consensus around it. Greg, you are first.
Wow. Well, we've had a lot of really tough issues on the city council in the last 4 years. I'll maybe give a couple of examples. One of the toughest decisions I had to make was when there was a proposal to bring forward a vote to stop the funding, is what they called it, of the city administration building. And I had opposed the administration building, so it was very tempting to vote for that. But what I realized at the time was that the bonding was already going to take place and we couldn't stop it. And I felt very strongly that I did not want to do something where I was going to give citizens the thought that it was actually going to stop it, and all it was going to create was anger and bitterness when the mayor bonded for it the next week anyway. So that's why I oppose that. Now, I do want to jump over to the smoking ban. I originally opposed the smoking ban that we had. I really heavily did based on some liberty concerns, but we worked really, really hard to come to a consensus. And we sat down in the room and we figured out, what do we have to give and take? And we came up with an 8-0 vote on something that many of us totally opposed at the beginning, and I'm really proud of that.
Thank you. Julian?
Yeah, so thank you. Decision making is something that in law enforcement you have to do, maybe 15, 20 times a day, and the decisions don't come easy. In particular, though, I will speak to my time on the recruiting team as a state law enforcement officer. As a matter of fact, I serve right now as the lead recruiter for that recruiting team. So I do have experience as well when we talk about recruiting individuals into law enforcement and also retaining individuals in law enforcement as well, which to me is more important to retain your individuals than recruit. But I'll talk specifically about the recruiting team. And as a state employee, if anybody knows anything about the state of South Dakota, even if there is funding, there's never funding. And so as a recruiting team member, we had to really hone in on how to recruit without any dollars. And so how do you recruit in-state, out-of-state? How do you ensure public safety in-state and out-of-state and for travelers without any funding? So one of the things that we did was we ensured that we put together a public safety strategy that surrounded recruiting. And so even though we were recruiting individuals, it actually played into more of a public safety aspect, and we did that through social media. We used the tools that we had available at our fingertips to ensure that we gave every option available to the public.
Thank you. The next question. The second penny sales tax and the front foot assessment were created to fund building and maintaining roads in the city. Given the growth of the city of Sioux Falls and the need for new streets as well as maintaining current streets, how will you prioritize those dollars?
And I assume I'm first this time, correct?
You are correct.
All right. So when we talk about prioritizing dollars, we talk about what's necessary in our community. And so I actually, as I said earlier, I've been the vice president of Establishing Sustainable Connections, and we work extremely hard to develop and sustain relationships throughout the entire community. And so I have had the opportunity to talk with those in our city that are, I say afforded with, but not necessarily afforded with unique situations in life. And so we know that those who are in those unique situations in life, sometimes they feel ignored. And when I say they feel ignored by their streets becoming the last streets to be repaved. Their water maybe not having the same quality of someone else's water. And so my priority is always, first and foremost, going to be the people, and to go out and speak to the people and to understand which individuals in our community deserve those dollars first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg?
You know, roads has always been our highest priority. We put over $30 million into roads out of our second penny. When we had a capital surplus this last year, we put several more $1 million into roads. Roads are a difficult thing because we have 78 square miles of city, and that means we have hundreds of miles of roads and thousands of lane miles, and we cannot possibly fix every road. In addition to that, the last 2 or 3 years have been one of the worst in the last 20, 30, 40 years because of the water. We've had such excessive water, the freeze-thaw cycle is just obliterating our roads. One of the things that we always have to remember is that it costs about $3,000 to do a microsurfacing, which is just a little asphalting on a neighborhood streets. It can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars into the millions of dollars to do a major road project where you have to tear it up completely. So what we have to do aggressively is repair neighborhood roads and do it early when they're starting to deteriorate before they get too far, because you can do hundreds of roads in neighborhoods for the same price it costs to build out one arterial that costs maybe $10 million. Sometimes arterials come at us and we have no choice. Jefferson High School is about to be built, so we have to build that. It costs several $1 million, but it's just prioritizing and working on those neighborhood roads really aggressively.
Thank you. Next question. COVID-19 has had an immense impact on our community, state, and nation. Though the effects of this pandemic are already being felt, our community will likely have to deal with this issue for months to come and potentially years to come. First, how do you think the city has dealt with the issues so far? And secondly, in your opinion, how do you balance the concerns of economy with public health? Greg, you are first.
This is such an emotional issue. I've never received so many calls or so much passion for very obvious reasons, because we're literally talking about life and death. We're not talking about repairing a road. We have to take it seriously, but as leaders, we cannot panic. We cannot project fear. We can't continue to move the goalposts. We have to be clear with people. The original goal was to make sure that you had a bed if you needed one, if you had to go to the hospital. That is the goal, and we are reaching that goal. We have to continue to work on that. If we just lock down for the sake of locking down, we're just going to destroy the economy. And I want to hit something else. Many times people makes this comparison or this, that it's the economy versus people. The economy does not exist in a vacuum. The economy is made up of people with jobs, careers, lives, people losing their jobs, People are suffering, and based on our response, we can cause a lot of suffering. That's why we have to be very, very careful. So we cannot just say that you're just putting the economy over people. People are hurting very badly right now. We're having problems with suicide. We're having problems with depression, with a job loss, worrying about how they're going to feed their families. All of these things are hurting people, and we have to balance that as policymakers, so we can't go too far in either direction. We also have to think about the liberty aspect. I will not issue a stay-at-home order under any circumstances because of liberty. There's a line that I will not cross. This virus hits the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions hard. We have to protect them. We have to focus on them first and foremost. That's what we need to focus on. The rest of us need to take reasonable precautions, and we have to not live in fear.
Thank you. Julian?
Thank you. So, one of the things that COVID-19 has really brought to light are the deficiencies in our health care system. And so although we cannot live in fear, we also have to be realist. And one of the facts of COVID-19 is that Sioux Falls produced, at one point, was the #1 hotspot of COVID-19 in the entire country. And that's real. That's real. As a business owner, as a small business owner, I understand better than almost anyone the importance of our economy. But I also understand that I would not have a business if it wasn't for the people in this community. I understand that if it wasn't for the people in this community, my wife and I would not have the opportunity to feed our family. So for me, people always will be over the economy. That's first and foremost. The other thing is, I brought up the health deficiencies that have been brought to light. The hot spot here in Sioux Falls was made up of mostly black and brown individuals. And so when you talk about someone sitting on city council to represent those individuals, to understand their healthcare needs, you're talking about someone that looks exactly like me. You're talking about someone who has the same life experiences as me. You're talking about someone who has been in that community, serving with those people, boots on the ground, to understand their needs and to develop policies to ensure that everyone in our community has their needs met.
Thank you. At Tuesday's informational meeting, April's finance report was presented to City Council. March sales tax collections were down 2.6%. Entertainment collections were down 24.3%. And further reductions are forecasted. With the budget process scheduled to start in July, some tough decisions will likely have to be made. How do you plan on prioritizing the city's budget? Julian, you're first.
So once again, and this is one of those instances where, and I know this is politics and this is a debate and we're supposed to disagree on everything, but this is one of those situations where I believe Greg and I would probably agree. As far as budgeting or prioritizing our current budget, we have to ensure that quality of life is better every single day. And whether that's through infrastructure, through our roads, through our waterways, to ensure that we don't have flooding or we don't have the mass flooding that we are used to. First off, we shouldn't be used to mass flooding. We need to make sure that we repair those things every year. And so when we talk about the infrastructure needs to ensure that quality of life is better, I think that is the #1 priority when it comes to budgetary issues in Sioux Falls.
Thank you. Greg?
Well, I think the first thing is realizing that our citizens are hurting right now, and we have to do what we can to make sure that we help them. And there's really two things. One is not raising taxes and fees on them right now when they're financially hurting. And then the other thing is making sure that we're providing them those reliable services and that quality of life. And so that's about prioritizing. We're really better positioned than any city in the nation to handle this, and that really comes down to all of our planning and having a strong emergency fund. So you had mentioned those numbers. even though we do have those numbers and they are not good, we actually are up in our sales tax year to date because of 3 strong months. Plus, we had a really good year the last year, and we actually have extra money in savings. So if we need to, we can always spend down a little bit of our reserves. The entire reason we have a reserve is for emergencies, and if this isn't an emergency, I really don't know what is. It's just, again, about how do we prioritize the things that really matter and that won't affect our citizens. There's things that we can cut, like travel and training for our city employees. There's a lot of other things that we can cut around the margins, and it's not going to have a big impact on citizens, and we can continue to fund all of those critical city services, and I know that's something we can make it through. The entertainment tax will probably be the worst because those were the sectors that were hit the hardest. Thankfully, the entertainment tax, most of what we spend it on is capital, which is major projects. So all we have to do is decide that we'll just push off the improvements at the convention center for 1 year, and we've solved the problem. So it's just prioritizing.
Thank you very much. The next question, South Dakota provides a limited number of financial initiatives to aid our efforts in encouraging business relocation and the development in the greater Sioux Falls area. Do you support financial incentives such as tax increment financing to incentivize local business relocation and development? Why? And further, do you have any ideas for additional financial incentives to help attract businesses? Greg, you are first to respond.
Well, the answer is yes, and I will tell you, talking to the Development Foundation, incentives, yes, they're important, but you have to have a workforce that can meet the needs of what the employer is looking for. So again, it's going to come down to education and helping to make sure that we get children the training that they need, and also working with the school district to talk about that not everybody needs to go to a 4-year school. There's a lot of very high-paying jobs and a lot of demand in certain sectors that are things that you would do in a tech school or even an apprenticeship, and making sure that we're getting kids down the right paths so that we can have those jobs that people are going to need. Going directly to your question, yes, I do support incentives such as tax increment financing. It needs to make sense. It needs to be one of those but-for tests, or it has to be a big impact. If you're bringing in something and it's just going to create a couple hundred service sector jobs, it's going to pay $10 an hour, then it's probably not something we need to incentivize. But if you're going to bring in some sort of a manufacturing plant, they're going to pay $30 an hour, and it's something that we can do where we can make it work, competing with every other city, yes, that's when it makes sense. That's when we should look at it.
Thank you very much. Julian.
So the answer to the question is yes. Do I support TIFs? Yes, I do. But only, and I want to stress the but in there, but only if the largest benefit is to the members of this community. As I said time and time again, I am someone who is absolutely 100% for the people of Sioux Falls. And so if it benefits the developer more than it benefits the community, then I will not be voting for a TIF. But if it benefits our community members, if it has a benefit maybe to affordable housing in our community, if it has a benefit to entertainment in our community, if it has a benefit for safety in our community, absolutely I'm for TIFs.
Thank you very much. Our next question. As our existing businesses expand and new businesses move to Sioux Falls, city government and its partners will need to look for creative ways of supporting housing development in all income ranges and within multiple forms, including rental and owner-occupied. The Northwest District has land available for housing development. What do the candidates understand to be the role of government in creating access to housing? Julian, you are first.
So number one for me, I am a big proponent of home ownership. And here's why. Do I understand the importance of rental property? Do I understand the importance of leasing? Absolutely, because everyone is not in the position to buy a home. But here's why I am a big proponent of finding a way to make it affordable for everyone to own their home. What most people don't know is, number one, if a family stays together, the children are 2 times as likely to graduate from high school. If a family that stays together owns a home, then those children are 2 times that greater to graduate not only from high school, but to have a higher education, either a certificate or a diploma. And so with that brings us to a level of participation in our community to where we can keep people in our community. We can actually put people into the workforce, and we can create leaders that we want to see. I say it all the time, Sioux Falls has an opportunity to do things the right way. We are leaders in this community. We are not followers. And so if we lead with the opportunity and we give people opportunity and the affordability to buy homes, maybe it starts off as a renting program or a leasing program, but if we give them the opportunity to buy homes, it sets not only them up for success, but it sets their children and their children's children up for success as well.
Thank you. Greg.
First and foremost, it's about infrastructure. If there's no water, sewer, and roads, there will be no homes. We have to do that first and foremost. We do have an accessible housing division. We have put hundreds of thousands of dollars into that. We are funding a housing trust fund where we're going to be able to use that to do a number of different initiatives. There's a lot of things in which we can do. We've tried some things in the past, and we're trying to fine-tune and find better ways to do it. One of the things that we do is we try to buy homes that have major code violations, or they're really falling into disrepair, so that we can either rehab them or we can demolish them and build a good, safe home. And a rising tide lifts all boats. So you fix that one in that bad house and that one in that neighborhood, then they all start to improve. There's a lot of public sector investment we can do. You start beautifying boulevards and you rebuild roads, give people new roads, they start taking pride in home ownership. That helps as well. Giving people grants and loans to do improvements on their home, particularly things on the outside where the neighbor sees, hey, they got their house painted. We're doing neighborhood grants where we're helping people to get their houses painted. We're helping them to get trees in their boulevard. There's all of those things that we can do. Low interest loans, forgivable loans and grants to get their first home. We're doing a lot of that. We need to continue to do that. And then we need to start looking outside of the box, like maybe do a TIF in an entire development where we'll give you a TIF, but we want to see affordable housing, a lot of affordable housing, and it needs to stay that way. So we need to continue to think outside of the box, and we're continuing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now conclude the forum this evening with our final question. What would you like the audience to remember about you tonight as they prepare to vote on June 2nd? Julian, you're first. For some reason.
I'm first on this one?
Yeah, that's what my notes say,
Okay.
but it should go to Greg, shouldn't it? Yes.
Okay.
You are first.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Well, big question. I want you to know I've spent the last 4 years working tirelessly to serve constituents. Some of the things I'm most proud of are the things that people never see. One of our jobs is to be a liaison. Citizen calls us, they have an issue, and we reach out to the right department and we get them that help. We have wonderful citizens going out to their house and seeing what problems they have. I serve my constituents tirelessly. I spend a lot of time doing my research, talking to all sides before I make a decision. I don't make decisions emotionally. I make them based on fact. I do my homework. I explain my rationale. If you watch these meetings, you'll see I explain how I got to my decision, and I think that's a big part of transparency. I'm not afraid to stand on principle and go it alone at times. I've been steady and effective. I get things done. I work really well with my colleagues in the administration, and I've taken leadership roles, and again, I'm trying to elevate the discourse and lead with integrity and be a counselor that my constituents can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian?
So one of the things that I live by, first off, one of the individuals that I listen to a lot is Pastor T.D. Jakes, and he wrote in one of his books about a table. And so before I tell you the story about the table, I want to make sure that one thing that you remember about me is that I am passionate about the people in Sioux Falls. I don't serve the people in Sioux Falls, I serve with the people in Sioux Falls. My experience, my knowledge, the time that I have put in, my efforts that I have put in, not only through law enforcement, but through community organizations, it proves it. And I'll tell you, based on that experience, this is where the story about the table comes in. Pastor T.D. Jakes says that tables Tables are made with trees, but God doesn't give us tables. He gives us trees so that we can build the tables. And so for me, I go into communities understanding that their table doesn't look like my table, but I'm giving those opportunities to build their own table, and I'm earning a seat at their table so I can understand how to work through their issues and how to create policies to ensure that every need is met in Sioux Falls.
Thank you. That is all the time we have for questions. We probably could do one more question, but I don't have any left. So we'll now be moving to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to comment further on issues brought up or to comment on a topic that wasn't covered in questions. We will start closing statements with Greg.
Well, thank you to the Greater Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Over the last 4 years, we faced unprecedented challenges, floods, tornadoes, and now a pandemic. In times like these, we need calm and steady leadership more than ever. I believe I have demonstrated those qualities. With the growing city comes new problems and opportunities. It takes hard work and a lot of due diligence to make good decisions. I believe I've proven to be an informed and hardworking public servant. I've worked to improve quality of life for my district. I secured funding for the extension of the bike trail, which will start at Legacy Park and will head north up to Southeast Tech, providing residents direct access to our bike trail. We'll continue to improve existing parks and add more parks to the district as it develops and grows. I've worked to ensure orderly development, supporting infill development when it makes sense to reduce expensive urban sprawl, but at the same time, I've worked to protect existing single-family by authoring an ordinance change that doubled the distance an apartment must be from existing single-family homes. I know tax dollars are your money, and I will not support taxes and fees we do not need. I led the fight to defeat a proposal that would have more than doubled the taxes you pay on your cable bill. We didn't need it, and it's your money. I fought for accountability and transparency. I led the charge to get an independent inspection of the wall panels on the event center and served on the committee that selected that firm. I convinced the prior administration to make public change orders on major construction projects, a practice that continues today. We now have real-time visibility of those projects. I explained my decision-making, and I'm forthright with my constituents. I've been a strong supporter of the police and public safety. I've supported every request for new officers and any equipment that they need. I brought forward a proposal with Councilor Erickson that funded overtime for police officers working at special events. With that funding secured, officers working on patrol and at schools will not have to leave those critical duties to work at special events, thus making the city safer while ensuring we don't lose those great special events that make our city a great place to live. I led the fight to give police officers retroactive pay raises when union negotiations went on past the new year. I'll continue to support more patrols and traffic enforcement. We'll continue to aggressively go after drug dealers while getting addicts the help they need. We'll pay our police officers well, knowing we can never pay them enough. I've been a strong advocate for aggressively repairing our roads. We must maintain our infrastructure. We cannot get behind and play catch-up. I've worked tirelessly to serve my constituents. Some of my proudest accomplishments are those that most will never know about. We're a liaison and an advocate for our constituents. It's helping an elderly constituent on Social Security find a great deal to repair her sidewalk, or helping somebody with a water problem get their water working again when the landlord wouldn't. My knowledge of city government and experience in problem solving gives me a unique ability to analyze and solve problems. We have many challenges, but even more opportunities. Our best days are yet to come. It would be my honor to serve, and I hope for your vote on June 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We'll now move to Julian for your closing statement. You have 3 minutes.
So thank you once again to everyone who participated, and I appreciate the crowd that's here to look at us today, to listen to the concerns of the citizens and to hear both candidates out. Thank you to my opponent, Greg, for his thoughts as well. As a career law enforcement officer, as a small business owner, as a son of a nurse, a retired nurse, a son of a retired teacher, all I know is public service. That's all I know. I know how to serve with people. I'm not here to I'm not here to buy relationships. I'm here to build relationships. I'm here to sustain those relationships, and I'm here to continue to develop those relationships to ensure that every single decision is made not only rises the boats of those who have large boats, but it rises the boats of those who have small boats. Our policies need to be equitable. We talk a lot about equality, but we forget about equity. And so our policies that we create on city council need to be equitable. I bring the experience, I bring the knowledge to the table, and I bring the relationships that I have developed over the past 10 years. This is not a fly-by-night option for me to run for city council. This is something that I have been doing, I've laid the groundwork for, I have put the work in for 10 years, and my experience speaks for itself. I hope to earn your vote on June 2nd for the city council seat in the Northwest District. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. I'd like to thank our Northwestern District candidates, not only for your contribution today, but also for your interest in serving our community. I personally know it's a very thankless job at some points, and you have very tough decisions to make. We will be taking a brief, about 10-minute break, and after break, we'll resume with our at-large candidates, and they will, if we could have our candidates make their way to the side. Again, we will begin in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much.